Today, I want to dive into the idea of mental models and how they influence our creative process, particularly in music production. I'll share some personal insights on how I've managed to overcome some creative blocks and how I've expanded my approach to making music. As creators, many of us find that our environment plays a crucial role in shaping our work. Our surroundings often dictate our expectations for how we create, and I've noticed that I'm particularly spatially oriented when it comes to creative work, leading to specific mental models around how I engage with creative activities. When I'm in my music space, I tend to have a specific routine and approach to making music. The familiarity of my gear, the layout of my workspace, the particular software I'm using, all these elements contribute to a certain workflow. Contrast this with creating music in a different setting, like a park or just a different room in your house, and the change in environment often leads to a shift in perspective and approach. And that change in the familiar forces us to think differently, to adapt, and often leads to new and unexpected creativity. So by mixing up these spatial associations, it can lead to brand new ways of thinking about things, shifting any existing mental models. Sometimes I'll deliberately change my setup in a familiar space, rearranging equipment, adding a new instrument, or just sitting in a different spot. These small changes can have a surprisingly big impact on the creative process and the perspectives you might have. In my journey as a musician and producer, I've developed a strong connection with sequencing MIDI. Its flexibility has always appealed to me. It allows for continuous refinement and adjustment, which aligns well with how my brain thinks of music. You can always go back and tweak a note or adjust its velocity. I can easily create variations and keep track of a history throughout a project. And so this preference has greatly influenced my approach to eurorack. I've spent a lot of time looking out for usable MIDI tools, both for input and output. To me, the distinction between recorded performances and improvised jams is huge in terms of the structure and development for a song. More experimental and improvised sessions, I might use modules that generate random or algorithmic sequences, but I'll often try to capture these as MIDI data so I can refine and develop them later. Otherwise, I'd just record a performance and not have a useful way to do anything with it. Despite my comfort with MIDI, I realized that I've been overlooking all the possibilities of sampling. It's remained an unfamiliar way of working that I hadn't fully explored. My time in music has largely been oscillator or instrument based, infinitely variable, and samples have felt fixed and much less flexible. While yes, I have accumulated a collection of samples, primarily for drums and the occasional bits of texture, I hadn't really explored the art of sampling itself and gone looking for the flexibility that was available to find new shapes and forms. My recent experiences with the Digitect opened my eyes to sampling possibilities, but I also encountered limitations that didn't quite fit my more ambient and effects-driven workflow with the mono recordings and limited recording time. These experiences have made me more comfortable with the concept, however, and made me realize that I needed to explore further to find sampling tools that would complement my creative tastes. In my quest to expand my creative toolkit, I've experimented with various other grooveboxes and similar devices. And while some, like the MPC, didn't immediately click with my established mental models of how to make music, I remained open to new possibilities. And this openness to new tools and perspectives has finally led me to discover Koala Sampler, an app that's been a breath of fresh air to me for music making approaches. It's been around a while, and many see it in terms of beat making. But it actually offers a really nice blend of tape-like sampling, looping, and chopping, and has elements of MIDI sequencing, so it really bridges the familiar with new creative approaches. And since it's a mobile app on my iOS devices, I can wire it up with AOM or audio bus. I can smash MIDI into it from external sources, or pull audio from its various buses and use external plugins at will. It also has some pretty good built-in effects, and it's all for a pretty reasonable price. Most people use Koala to make beats and sample vinyl, but the ease of quickly creating new samples and loops has been amazing. It's made it really simple to quickly sample a synth, especially eurorack, for creating long ambient loops, layering those loops, and using classic tape techniques like phasing and chopping. I've actually been enjoying Koala so much, it's getting me a little tempted to take a look at the SP404 hardware, but maybe another time. Exploring Koala samplers made me reconsider sampling in terms of tape manipulation, and this shift in perspectives has really shifted my entire mental model. It's allowed me to approach music creation from a totally different angle, and it's opening up new directions for me to think about. For instance, using field recordings and synth jams to use not just as textual elements, but as core building blocks for composition. Treating recordings like Lego bricks and manipulating them as much as you want to create layers, or extreme time-stretched drones, or making rhythms from otherwise non-rhythmic sources. This journey of discovery has reignited my interest around my eurorack setup, which had become somewhat neglected. I'm now excited to explore new material and compositions centered around the deeper sampling techniques I've been learning. And this experience has reminded me of the importance of continual learning and exploration in music production, and really all creative fields. It's easy to get comfortable with our tools and techniques, but pushing beyond that comfort zone often leads to the most interesting creative discoveries. And none of these thoughts are new or revolutionary, of course. This advice has been around forever, but everyone learns at their own speed and has different goals and destinations, and it's a reminder to always be willing to learn and adapt. Growth tends to live just outside our comfort zones, and by pushing our boundaries and exploring new approaches, we can continually evolve as artists and creators. By challenging our mental models and embracing new tools, techniques, and perspectives, we can discover fresh creative potential. Thanks for joining me on my exploration of new ways of thinking about music creation. I look forward to hearing about your own experiences and discoveries. Until next time, keep creating and keep exploring. Cheers.